All right, good morning. It's part 7 in our review of the interrogation of Chris Watts. And where we left off, Graham was challenging Chris's story like no one ever has before. He pretty much eviscerates him and exposes all of the innards. And just when Chris thinks it can't get any worse, he's about to meet Tammy the next day. But to finish up and summarize the Graham section, Graham's performance in getting to the heart of this persistent liar who just denies and denies and denies and rambles and evades answering questions directly is so impressive that I found myself almost jealous of Chris for being interrogated, because I found myself wanting to be interrogated by Graham. The way he is, he's well-spoken, he's clean-cut, he probably smells like $1,000,000. That's one thing that doesn't come through in the audio and visual footage of this case is smells. And I bet that Graham has one of those smells where you ever been in public and someone walks by you and you go, "Oh, it smells so good. No, come back. Come back. I want to smell more of that. We don't even have to meet. Just be near me while you're conducting your business." Oh, they're gone. So I bet that Graham smells like that, and Chris is just, I can see why he would just stay and stay and stay, because there's always this question of, why did Chris keep talking? Why didn't he just get a lawyer? And the way this successful, well-spoken, clean-cut, smells like $1,000,000 guy is showing such interest and intelligence in his life, imagine how good that feels to have someone like that saying, I've been looking into your life, and a lot of guys don't do the dishes and fold the socks for their wives or put shoes on their kids or cook eggs. Can you just imagine someone like that talking to you like that, and you're going, "Oh, geez, thanks, Graham." So I can see why he would just want to sit there and keep talking. Obviously, in the real world, being interrogated would not be so enjoyable, because there would be the stress of the real life serious situation. But for me to even be fantasizing about how good it would feel to have someone like that showing such interest and giving you pats on the back for all of your menial daily tasks, how good that would feel is very impressive. Thought about being an interrogator too, but that wouldn't work out even as well, because to sit there and look at somebody who's looking you in the eyes and lying to you for hours on end, knowing that they committed a heinous crime that you're trying to solve, and they're just lying to you, lying their asses off about it. I don't have that kind of tolerance for bullshit, so wouldn't do as well there. But if I was ever an eccentric billionaire after giving money to charities and paying off my family's bills and everything, I think I would hire Graham to do an interrogation on me about my life in an innocent scenario. So one final nugget from the Graham section is how, as Graham is like building up Chris's ego, because he wants him to come back the next day and do the polygraph and continue interrogating him. So he's giving him all these pats on the back I just mentioned about how good of a father and husband he is. And you see just how massive Chris's ego really is, in that while Graham is complimenting him, Chris is interrupting and stepping over Graham's compliments to compliment himself. So it ends up sounding like, "I was very impressed, Chris. A lot of dads don't pack a backpack. You should see me on the weekends. And a lot of dads don't cook eggs. Well, I like to get involved." He's complimenting himself while he's being complimented. I think I may have been actually mistaken when I said that his head shape came from conforming to the shape of the light bulb, from the idea that went off over his head and the strength of that overtook his mind. I think it may actually be that his head was growing out backwards, and it was going to continue down and actually go up his own ass. but he got arrested before it got that far. So we never got to saw his head go up his own ass. But he did get arrested, so that's probably more important. So Graham successfully gets Chris to come back the next day where he meets Tammy. And I think this is key too, in that Chris had gotten used to talking to Graham, and that's how his higher than average IQ is based on pattern recognition. We can see how he memorizes all these things and then can just remember and list them all off again and again without forgetting anything. He recognizes patterns, and that leads to a high intelligence quotient. So I think he had gotten used to talking to Graham, and the way that Graham switches back and forth between the soft-spoken psychologist almost and just a blunt accuser. Nothing you've said makes sense. And he was I think he came into this next day prepared for Graham maybe giving him the polygraph, and he was just going to know how to hunker down and deal with that. Okay, when he starts accusing me, I'll just deny everything he says. And when he's giving me pats on the back, I'll just soak it all in and feel good about myself for all the things I deserve to hear. So he's probably surprised to come in and see Tammy sitting there. And Tammy is a different personality, and I think that catches Chris off guard, because whereas Graham switches back and forth, Tammy is essentially the same person all the way through. She's almost like a friendly helper or a food server at a restaurant, like, okay, I'm going to talk you through this, and I'll give you all the options, and you get to pick which one you want, and we're going to make it through this, don't worry. And she almost lulls Chris into this dreamlike state where he's still repeating all the same things, but he almost sounds like he's sleep talking. And eventually she gets in enough things where by the time we get to the polygraph, his dreams become a nightmare. And the way that she sneaks in these passive insults, it just proves that Chris's doublespeak is nothing special. I mean, these interrogators do it and do it better, because they're actually better equipped. They deal with these kind of liars in their job, but they also have the human emotions that Chris lacks, where they understand how other people think and feel. So they're even sneakier with their deception. And I got to make an amendment to my liars or loses philosophy from a couple videos ago, because these investigators are using deception to get the truth out of Chris, and I think that is justifiable deception. Same as justifiable homicide. If someone was over your kid with an axe and you had a gun in your hand, you wouldn't sit there and say, I'm too good of a person to stop you from murdering my child. You would probably shoot them to save your kid's life. Justifiable homicide. You wouldn't want to do it if there was any other way, and that's what these investigators are doing. They're using justifiable deception to stop a child murderer. And that's okay. This lying does not make them losers. So they not only speak in doublespeak, they do it better. So when Tammy is sneaking in these little insults that could be going either way, like, you are a really bad liar, and if you were sitting in this chair taking a polygraph right now, you would just be an idiot to do that. But of course you're not, because you're innocent, right? So that can go either way. They're kind of using doublespeak to go against what they know Chris really is. And the Tammy section has a lot of repeating, because she just asks him to repeat the same thing over and over again. And that's how he gets into this dreamlike state, is that he's repeating all the same lies he's memorized yet again. And the first thing that really pops out in this is how Tammy asks if he's gone back to work and when he's going back to work. And I don't know if a human being has ever sucked their own face inside out, but I think Chris comes about as close as you can when he says no to that. There's been a lot of body language analysis videos who say how that's hiding the truth when he sucks in his mouth. He has something he doesn't want to say that he knows, and he's trying to hold it in. And so when Tammy asks him, have you gone back to work yet? No. It's about as sucked in as you can possibly be, because he desperately wants to go back to work. And it's even in one of the other interviews with one of Chris's bosses. They mention how he was really keen to get back to work because we know now he wanted to do some final cleanup of Survey 319, the site where he disposed of his beautiful family. Remember, he left the sheet out there, and he probably knows he left some biological matter on the rims of the oil tanks. And he knew he needed to do some final cleanup. He was in a hurry to get it over with that morning because he knew his coworkers were going to be showing up, and he was already running behind from Shanann getting home late that morning, from the sandstorms in Arizona, and also from his kids unexpectedly being alive and causing him to be distracted and forget things. So, and that kind of leads right into the next very important example. And you may have been along with me for the ride on a lot of these examples where, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but we're still going along with you. But this one, Mike, I think you might be stretching a little too far on this one. And hear me out, because I'm going to explain why it does make a lot of sense and actually is one of the more important examples to come out of this entire interrogation. It's when Tammy asks about Chris's weight gain and says here you're 225, but you're only 185. Was that a lie? And Chris says, no, I gained weight because Celeste, the pregnancy. When I would be bringing Oreos up to Shanann, I would have a few on the way myself. I'm not going to lie. So I don't think the significance of this can be understated. He truly, literally, delusionally believes and blames Celeste making his wife hungry on his own weight gain because he stuffed his fat face with Oreos. And if you think that's a stretch and I finally jumped the shark on you with some of these connections I'm making, look what he did. This is a mind that thought cramming his 3- and 4-year-old daughters into oil tanks through holes that were too small for their bodies to fit was a good idea. Such a good idea that he actually did it in the real world, knowing the consequences. Look at the extent that he went to get away with it. Look at how extensive these lies are. Look at how many steps there were in his plan. He knew the consequences of doing this in the real world, and he still physically performed the action. That's how good of an idea he thought that was. So is it such a stretch that he would legitimately blame his unborn daughter for his own choice of eating Oreos to gain weight? I think he really does in his own mind, and that is maybe the most illuminating example of his mindset, really, and why he just absolves himself of all responsibilities, and to this day doesn't really think it's his fault of what he did, his crimes. It's always someone else's fault. His weight gain wasn't his fault. It was because his unborn daughter was making his wife pregnant, and his wife making him go down and get Oreos to satisfy her cravings. And because of all that, he had no choice but to eat the Oreos on the way up the stairs. So it's all their fault. It's everyone else's fault that he gained weight. So that's the way that sociopaths justify their own actions. It's always everyone else's fault. They kind of let other people make, especially passive sociopaths and covert narcissists, they let everyone else have control so that when something doesn't go right eventually down the road, it's always the other person's fault. And they can just sit back and say, what? You wanted this. This was your idea. It's only happening because of you. And that's kind of where Chris is at right now, trying to get his appeals in jail and hiring a private investigator. None of this was my fault. It was just everyone else made me do it. And this is the core of that mindset. He legitimately, in his head, maybe in the beginning it was just a joke to him, but he eventually came around to really believing that his weight gain was because of Celeste, the pregnancy. And do we have enough time to get into the next one? No, I think we're going to have to cut it off there. So, see you next time.